When it comes to examining our underlying behavior, not always a comfortable thing to do. But I always go back to a former mentor of mine had us compile what are the 7 lies that you are carrying around with you. And so that took some thought, and he was smart enough to have it tied into a physical exercise, so it really came up and out of you. And I find that really every single one of my triggers, my reactions, all comes from one of these deep-rooted lies. And what our job is here, as we're looking to really raise our level of consciousness, is to make sure that we understand what our story is, so we're not unconsciously reliving it again and again and again, and playing into our stories of self-limitation. That are almost always born of these core lies of ours. And I also have spoken a lot about how the light and the dark all needs to come to the table with you, how you cannot just live in love and light without a balance. And further to that, what I want to bring up for you is when you hit one of those buttons of either resistance or recognition of one of your lies popping up, or one of those stories that you tend to tell, and you're able to see it and you're able to identify it, I urge you to also look for the gold. Because every single one of those great lies that we carry around, like one that I carried around for years, that the facts of my life have proved to be false, but it still comes up, is I'm helpless. I need someone to not just help and aid me, because I know that as grown-ups it's very hard for us to ask for help, but this is, I can't possibly accomplish this on my own. I can't possibly provide for myself and my son. So these were lies that I inherited. These are lies that I made my own. These are lies that I invented for myself. But there is always gold in one of those core stories that come up for you, especially when you can spot it. Because the gold in helplessness is your overreaction to so there's 2 things, right? So first of all, some people cannot accept help of any kind at any time. And if one of your core wounds is helpless, you may be more likely to ask or accept help, which is a gift. Most people are actually quite willing to help, but you have to be willing to accept it. So that's the first thing. That's the first gift that wound gives you. And the second one is, most often, if that's your gift, you're unconsciously undoing it by overreacting in the other direction. You may be overcompensatory and never ask for help, or extremely determined and single-minded. So that's also some gold that comes with that lie. So as you examine, and I think it's a really powerful exercise to examine, what are your core stories? There's got to be at least 4. Mine is really 5, and it's 6 and 7. 6 and 7 are kind of combined, but they really each deserve their own, kind of like the 7 deadly sins. I have the 7 core lies. And every single one of my self-imposed limitations, self-doubting talk, or even your ego self-aggrandizing yourself, has to do with one of those lies. It has to do with either telling the lie, or it has to do with falsely saying, no, I don't have that problem. I don't do that anymore. And then you look a little deeper and you're like, oh yeah, but I did it over here, didn't I? And I did it in this new fashion over here, didn't I? But don't dismiss those lies as just things you must get rid of. You're not going to suppress them. They're never going to go away. And they're also part of what your great gifts are. So, what also comes with helplessness? Vulnerability. And I show up every day here as real and raw as I know how to be, to hopefully, I get messages that I needed to hear that today. And that's the whole reason I'm here. I'm not afraid to give my ridiculous, awkward human testimony so that you feel not alone. because our crises tend to isolate us. And so you feel that someone else is doing this work. Or I also invite you every day. I give you an invitation. Maybe that's something to look at. So today's invitation is identify 3 of your core stories, the ones that underlie, because if you keep asking, why am I like that? Why do I do that? What's that motivation? You will get down to a single word. You will. And it may be shocking to hear, but I will also say that the human experience has a lot of them in common. So have a lot of compassion for yourself, but the identification of them will allow you to be able to recognize when they've got a hold of you. That's so important. Even if you aren't able to shift a thing yet, knowing, fuck, I know what that is huge. It's huge, and it's not to be underestimated in its importance. So again, today I offer you a couple of things. Identify at least 3 or 4 of the core stories, that the lies that you still tell to yourself about yourself, that you limit yourself with. And then if you can, today, if you've got some sort of behavior that kind of triggered you, see if it matches up with one of those stories. Because mine always trace back there. And it's an amazing learning tool. And that is what I have for you today. And I will see you tomorrow.